Keep pushing that boulder to the top of the hill. Welcome one and all to Suckville.
Hope, help, and healing? Yes, please. I'm your host, Silva Florence, a professional healer, writer, cyclist, and American expat living in Italy. And this is Live from Suckville. Imagine sitting in an empty house, in an empty room, talking to yourself into a microphone in front of your computer. That is me right now, putting together this podcast. It's a lot of fun, but at the same time, and I've also talked with other podcasters about this, it's like, who am I talking to? I mean, I know that there's people out there listening, because I do hear from you. But I honestly would love to hear from you some more, because sometimes I do really feel like I'm just kind of talking to myself. And I'm fine with that, because like I talk about later in this episode with Katie MacDonald, who is back for round 2, this is a passion project for me. I really, really believe in the power of storytelling. I believe in the power of storytelling to do something that is so crucial in all time periods for humans, but particularly in this one. And that is to bring us back together through our shared experiences and through directly or indirectly helping each other by sharing our ups and downs and our slips and falls and everything that goes right and everything that goes wrong. Because, as I say later, this is the experience of being alive, of being on this planet. And so that's why I'm here for stories like Katie's. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, that's totally okay. You might want to go back and listen to Season 3, Episode 4, in which Katie tells the first half of her ongoing story about healing through codependency. It was so good that I had to break it into 2 parts. Where we left Katie the last time was on the cusp of a dark night of the soul in the middle of the COVID lockdown, and she had just made a decision to very drastically change her life, and she was going to move out of her apartment in the city and go live on a farm. So without further ado, I'm going to close off the latest session of me talking to me and hand over the mic to Katie. Let's hear what happens next.
So I decided that I was going to move to this place called Red Clay Farm. There were a group of us, mostly femme folk, that decided that we were going to go be farmers for the summer.
Sounds kind of awesome.
It was. But for me, I knew that I kind of had made up my mind. I'm on this journey of self-discovery. Things have to change for me. Because I could feel myself dying. It was very physical, and I think if you've gone through a dark night of the soul, it's different for everyone. But for me, it really does feel like you're dying.
Because you have to die before you can be reborn, right? Because it's an end, basically.
Yeah. And not that I know what dying feels like. I mean, I've supposedly come close often in my life. I stopped breathing at 10 weeks or 10 days old, I think.
Oh my.
I'm like a cat. I've had lots of run-ins. I think I have a few more lives left. But anyway, I perceived that experience to feel like was dying. And, I think there's a difference between discomfort and pain. And I think both are important. And I would say that it was painful. It hurt to be alive. My skin hurt. I was so sensitive to everything, sounds. I was having constant panic attacks. So if I was, if I made lunch and then had to wrap it up using saran wrap, then I would have a panic attack about the environment and what's going to happen with the state of the world. And it would just go on and on and on and on down the rabbit hole.
Complete overwhelm.
Yeah. I decided when I went there that I was going to do things differently, and I was going to be really extreme about it, because that's apparently another characteristic of codependency. And someone who is not codependent can also be an extremist, but I do find it ironic.
So doing things to the extreme
Yeah.
is
Yeah,
another.
because it's a way to control, right?
Okay.
I believe I am a gray thinker and fiercely believe in the duality of things. It does feel more comfortable for me to be extreme about things. So if the opposite of codependence was going to be for me independence, I wasn't going to rely on anyone, and I wanted to have fierce boundaries because I was only just recently learning about boundaries. I had never had a boundary up until my beginning of my 30s.
What is a boundary to you?
Well, there are physical boundaries and emotional boundaries. My emotional boundaries are what I'm willing to accept and what I'm not willing to accept. That's the easiest way that I've learned. I mean, physical boundaries, again, are what I'm willing to accept and not accept. So I'm trying to think of examples. We don't really have a lot of boundaries in our house. Our house is kind of like a playhouse for grown-ups.
Cool.
Yelling. We don't have yelling at our house. The three grown-ups that live here, and our baby, well, not our baby, but Adrian and Adam's baby, and the baby that I get to.
The baby.
It's not a rule, but we just don't have that in our lives. We don't want it. We don't foster it. We have big emotions. We have anger, but there's other ways of communicating.
What happens if somebody wants to yell? You know, because sometimes a yell just comes out when you're really mad.
We're lucky. We're surrounded by woods.
So you can just go yell at the trees.
Yeah. Well, we don't yell at the trees. I would say we yell with the trees. The trees hold our yells, but I don't think we yell at the trees. They're great listeners, and they really are acceptance of really loud F words. I've experienced it. The way that we've kind of defined it is aggression is okay when it's sent upwards and not outwards.
What do you mean by that?
I have in moments expressed anger, but I was expressing it as in, I feel really angry because this thing happened, not you did this thing, you made me angry because of this thing, et cetera, et cetera. I think up anger is different than out anger.
Yeah, it's a more constructive way to use anger.
Yeah.
Where it's like you're not just blasting it at someone and putting the blame on them. It's like using it to have a conversation about it without it getting more heated, maybe. Like a less inflammatory way to express your anger.
Yeah, I like that. A less inflammatory way. Anger is a great teacher. Why is my body experiencing this kind of emotional charge? Whoa, something must really be trying to get out or speak to me or alert me to something. So yeah, I think anger isn't inherently good or bad. It's the way that we express it. So I guess the kind of unwritten boundary that we have in our house is that, we're allowed to be angry. We're not allowed to treat each other like crap because we're angry.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like respect anger.
Yeah. I'm respectably angry right now.
I'm respectively pissed off right now.
Yeah. And that does happen sometimes. We're very
Yeah, because we're human.
Yeah. The difference is communicating. Like, it's been a wild shift for me in my grown-up life to live with other grown-ups who are able to say, my energy might feel really strange today. I'm processing some things. I just want you to know, so if you feel something, it's not directed at you. And it's so helpful, especially for me as someone who grew up thinking that I was in trouble all the time, because often I was, or being afraid all the time, because then I can, ease my inner child and say like, no, it's not you. You've done nothing wrong. This person is going through their own thing.
Yes, that's important, I think, is to be able to separate like my shit from your shit.
Yeah. That's probably one of the biggest pillars in codependency recovery. Separating my shit from yours, because entanglement happens, enmeshment happens. It's great fuel for codependency. so like a bit of an emotional and physical boundary for me. The person who we were essentially, we're kind of woofing.
Willing to work on organic farming, right? That's woofing.
I think sometimes I use words and I'm like, do I actually know what that means? That for me, woofing is like work exchange.
Agricultural work exchange.
Yeah. And that's what it was. I was a pretend farmer for 2 hours a day. And the 2 hours is important because I had asked Tom, I said, Tom, what is our exchange? And Tom said, 2 hours a day is what I would like. And I said, okay. And so me being the extreme codependent in recovery, I would take my timer, I would take my phone, and I would listen to my podcast on codependency or systemic racism in the fields of red clay as I was weeding the broccoli. And I would set my timer.
I love this.
Yeah, I would set my timer for 2 hours. And it didn't matter if I was in the middle of a row, if I had 2 plants left. And I feel like if my father heard me sharing this, he would just be so upset, because I grew up with work being such a focus, and that's part of my healing as well, and being productive and being a perfectionist, and all of it is kind of tied into this healing of codependency. I've just been healing, I think, in general, but I would leave it. I would leave it as an energetic statement to the universe, like, I'm only doing this thing for 2 hours. My worth is not dependent on whether I finish this goddamn row or not. And I would say that to the other, we called ourselves the farm wives, but I would say it to my other farm wives. I would say, I know this is probably wildly annoying, but I need to do this. The other thing I would do is we would share meals. So we would all there was about 10 of us living there at a pretty steady rate. And so we would sign up for meals. We only had to cook twice a week. And we were fed 3 times a day, 7 days a week, because we all contributed. I remember laying on the futon in the kitchen and being so uncomfortable in my body. And I'm not often in my body, but I was in my body that day. And I remember just feeling like, oh, this feels miserable not to help.
Were you feeling like physical sensations?
I felt in my heart, like that sense of like worthlessness, like who am I? How am I contributing if I'm not doing something? I remember at one point someone saying to me, like, thank you so much. You are such a supportive person. You bring so much to my life, or something along those lines with me. And I was shocked, because in my brain I was going, but I didn't do anything.
Because you were so used to just doing everything.
Yeah, it makes me emotional to think about that, because I think I still have that. Like, I still, just feel so grateful when people see me and experience me and just appreciate my essence, or appreciate who I am and what I offer the world just by being me. I eventually went on to go to school to become a counselor. And, that gets murky because it is a helping field. And again, going back to what we said at the beginning, that's part of why it is so important for us to be doing the work always, always, always. Because people don't come to a counselor because they want to be fixed. They might think they're coming to be fixed, but it's not my job. And it's ethically and spiritually not okay to try to fix people.
You're the conduit, right? But you're also you, and you're also offering them your essence and your presence at the same time. Like, you are an important part of it.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I receive that. That's one thing. Another thing. I've been in a constant science fair experiment for the last 3 years. This is a science fair experiment. Sure, I'll do a podcast. Why not?
Live from Suckville, science experiment. Yes.
It has been. And I just kind of, for me, like, introducing magic in my life and introducing play and all the things that my inner child never wanted to give up, but my grown-up self was like, no, we have to become a grown-up, which really only happened a few years ago anyway. But I think that this is just coming to me now. I think the more I tap into my inner child, the more able I am to be a grown-up, or grown up in what the world perceives being a grown up is.
Yeah, because being a grown up means that I think you've integrated parts of your inner child, your teenager, if you're doing it right. You're not completely just an adult, because how boring is that?
It's so boring, and I'm allergic to boredom. But there is a teaching in that for me. Part of my allergy to boredom is my desire for chaos, because again, that's what my little brain and my little being were used to, and we are comforted by familiarity. And that's, that isn't an original thought. That's something that I've learned. My therapist recently said to me, it's interesting, Katie, you're a perfectionist, but you also procrastinate. So what you're doing by that is creating a constant state of chaos. And
I make my own tornadoes.
I know. And it just exemplifies how recovery is this ongoing thing. Recovery of anything. We spend the first 20 years, collecting trauma, and then the next portion of our lives healing from it and learning from it.
Yeah, basically screwing things up so that you can fix them later. It's kind of fun, isn't it?
Yeah, fun.
And it's okay to not have things finished. Like,
Absolutely.
some things need time.
I am a box checker by nature. I really like when things are complete. And I've done that with my healing. And I've noticed that in myself, where a trigger will come up and I'll experience it again. And I kind of went through this phase of beating myself up about that, like just feeling really crappy that I was still experiencing this thing in a hard way, but then realizing it might be with me forever and always, but how I respond to it and how I react to it. And then noticing, it didn't take me out for an entire week this time. It might have taken me out for a day.
Exactly. That's progress.
Yes. It's something I've had to come to terms with. I've always had a fear of time. I think because I've had these interesting instances in my life where I've felt like death was close, like being told from an early age, you stopped breathing when you were 10 days old. I was 31, I think, when I got skin cancer, for example. And it was, I shocked my doctor because it's a very uncommon thing. And then having to have a partial hysterectomy, 33, I think I was. The through line in all of that is feeling like there isn't enough time, like feeling this crunch of like, I have to do it all right now. I still face that. I still have this major imposter syndrome as a newly practicing counselor, as somebody who's 36, who's kind of in a place where a lot of 22-year-olds are. I'm newly out of school. I have a buttload of student debt. In addition to that, like, I haven't dated anyone. Not that I ever really dated. I think dating is so weird. For me, it's a whole other podcast.
We'll have you on again.
I'm sure there could be some people that relate to that as well. But, part of my healing has been to be intentionally single, because I just, I jumped from relationship to relationship. And I don't mean necessarily romantic or sexual. I always had a best friend. I always had a group of friends around me. I always had people that I could be codependent with. And circling back to the very beginning of this, when we talked about codependency, yes, I identify as a codependent person. And when we think of codependency, we do think of it as how people show up in relationships. So relationships can be codependent. Oftentimes there's one or two codependent people in that relationship. Oftentimes there's addiction.
The perfect nightmare.
It is. And I've been in those perfect nightmares. Most part of my wanting to retract from being in a relationship with people is that most of my relationships have been really messed up. I don't know the only reason I have any sense of what a healthy relationship is by living with the people that I live with. I refer to them as my chosen family. We started off as housemates and they fell in love. And, 2 years later, there's a baby in the mix. But they've really...
Oh, how cool.
It's so cool. And it's a real joy and privilege to live with people who have done the work and who, to me, embody what it is to have a healthy relationship. I know what is possible and I refuse to settle for less. And if I'm being perfectly honest, I'm terrified.
What are you so terrified of?
To be without a relationship, to be without anything for a long period of time, I think then to jump back into it or to even ease myself back into it is intimidating. Physical touch has always been tricky for me, though I have like great huggers in my life. I'm grateful for those huggers and people that I share intimacy with in other ways. Yeah, that's something that I'm having to work through right now. I think lots of people through COVID have realized how fucked up, pardon my French.
You can cuss on here. It's no problem.
We can curse? Oh,
Mhm.
would have been cursing much more.
No
I
problem.
swear like a sailor. I think the isolation has just been so demoralizing or dehumanizing for so many of us. Yeah, there's lots of components. And again, why I'm in therapy, among other reasons. But, I'm doing all this work because I want to bring forward in my next relationship, which might be in 10 years. Like I've had to have a love affair with myself.
It's the best kind of love affair. It's the best.
Yeah. And it's lonely at times, but
So can being in a relationship, though. You can be lonely in a relationship too,
you can be lonely in a crowded room. I feel like that's what loneliness is.
That's why it's very important to also be in love with yourself.
And I never thought it possible to experience love the way that I do. I never thought I could even like myself, let alone love myself. And I've realized too that concern is a really good costume for control. That was a big one for me. Like, I'm just concerned about you. Really, I'm judging you and I'm trying to control you because I think I know what's best for you.
And once I know what you need, I'm going to use it.
Yeah. Those things were particularly important to work through as a practitioner because they can cause harm if they're not dealt with adequately. So again, it's constant work.
It's very important that the intention behind whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah, that's kind of what when we're working with families at the treatment center, when we talk about codependency with family members, we'll say to folks, ask yourself, why am I doing this? What is the motivation behind this? Do I need validation? Do I need to try to fix this? Do I need to control this? Because that's what makes me feel safe. I think it always comes back to safety. I developed codependent tendencies to keep myself safe. I grew up in a house where my parents' trauma manifested in ways that were really harmful. And so for me to keep myself safe, I had to know how they were feeling. I had to be hypervigilant. I had to know, okay, if this happens, this thing will probably happen. If that happens, this other thing might happen. If I am a good girl, if I am doing what's expected of me, not necessarily what I want, but if I'm keeping everyone around me happy, I'm not going to get in trouble.
That must have been a really intense way to grow up.
Oh, immensely. Yeah. But I really believe, Silva, that, and again, I don't think this is an original thought. I think that the trauma we experience is such medicine for us. And then if we're able, we can offer it as magic. I really do believe that. And for me, it's such a gift to hear people say, like, I feel so safe with you. I don't know that I would be able to offer that kind of experience if I didn't know what it's like to feel unsafe all the time.
You can be a good net because you didn't have one.
Yeah, that's a nice way of saying it.
I want this podcast to be a net too. I want it to provide some of this magic through my amazing guests.
I think you're doing that. What an opportunity to give people a chance to speak about their experiences and then hopefully offer it as service to the world, right? And that's the confusing part with codependency. To be in service is, I think, so important in terms of being a human, in terms of our spiritual growth.
I agree.
But It's the taking it too far. That's what's confusing for people. They're like, but I thought it's good to be kind. I thought it's good to be caring. I thought we should put other people first. I think it becomes a negative thing when we're doing it so often that we negate our own needs.
At least in my own experience, like if I do something for someone, if I do what I believe is a service and I feel exhausted afterwards, it's because I used too much of my energy. And if I feel like recharged or I feel happy, then I've used the right amount of energy. That's me, at least.
That's an interesting gauge. That's really cool that you have that within yourself.
I think we all have the ability to find, it's my body. I'm listening to my body, right? I'm listening to how I feel, using the like wisdom that we all have in our body. And I'm very, very grateful that I can connect with it.
That's a new concept for me, Silva. I am determined to die as an embodied being. It's a work in progress.
You're getting there though. Like I feel like you're really making some big progress.
I think so too. As a counselor, your gauge or the way that you look at the way that you offer and receive energy, I think it's similar for me, but it does feel a bit more extreme in that there are instances where when you're sitting with somebody and holding space, it's a big output of energy. And so I might feel depleted. However, my forms of self-care also have to be really kind of extreme in nature. I can't skip moving my body. I can't skip speaking to either a therapist or my other supports about what's happening for me. I can't skip going into the woods at least once a week, if not every. It should be going every day. It's my backyard. But there's certain things, there's certain medicines that I have to participate or incorporate into my life, or I won't make it. I just won't make it.
Yes, this is some good wisdom here that you're sharing, because it's very, very important to know how you can care for yourself and give yourself back that energy, or that you've spent on something or someone.
It's only wisdom I've gained after what I call, a relapse in codependency, because like any other addiction, a relapse can happen. And it's harder with behavioral compulsions or addictions because it isn't this tangible thing. I didn't pick up a drink. For me, relapsing in codependency, I call it getting high off service. What that looks like is me doing, offering myself, cooking. And those things are great. I love those things.
Mm-hmm.
But the high comes from avoiding looking after myself, avoiding grounding myself in meditation, in going for the walks, in journaling, in the whatever my practices are in those seasons. And it's a complete dopamine hit. I don't sleep for periods of time. I am living in the stars. I don't have a sense of groundedness, as I said, and much like any other high, what goes up has to come down. And then I know that I've had a relapse because I'm in this lower place of, I haven't been living in my values. I haven't been taking care of myself. And now I have nothing to offer. So I have to be really careful.
That's really like, a lot of progress has gone into that realization too.
Mm-hmm.
That you can notice now when you're getting into that pattern again. And that's all to be honored, right?
Yeah, it's been a humbling, progressive journey because, again, I want things to be ticked off right away. I want things right now. And it just doesn't work that way. And it's this, I need to offer myself what I offer people that I counsel. I need to offer a non-judgmental place of safety. I've started talking to my mind as when it becomes an abuser, I start defending myself. And I'll say like, nope, not today, or you're not going to talk to her that way. And it's helping a lot.
It goes back to your boundaries, right? Like saying no is a boundary. Very important to be able to say no, but also to yourself. Like, no, that's not an okay way to treat me.
Yes. And I think others might appreciate this or identify with this. Keeping boundaries with myself is harder than anyone else.
Well, yeah, because who else is going to keep you accountable but you, right?
For a long time, I was, I don't trust people. I can't be in a relationship because I'm not there yet. What I was really, I think, experiencing was a distrust for myself. I couldn't trust myself in a relationship because I didn't have boundaries. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know what my body desired. Still all a work in progress, but now I have that awareness.
Yeah, that's huge.
I think so too.
Good job. You should be
Thanks.
patting yourself on the back some more, I think.
Thank you. Yes. In our house, we've had to practice just receiving compliments by saying thank you.
It's hard, right? Some people, it's very hard to receive compliments.
A lot of people.
Why is it so hard to receive a compliment?
Lots of things. I think in our house, we're all master deflectors. So it would often turn into like, but you are too. Or, "Oh, no, it was nothing." Or like, there's lots of reasons. I think systemically we're conditioned to think that if we love ourselves, then we are cocky or conceited. If we receive compliments, we're supposed to be humble. We're supposed to be selfless. I can only speak as a person living in Canada, but I think, Canada gets this rap of everyone's so nice in Canada. Well, there's lots that could be said about that. I mean, I think we have our issues, and Tim Hortons, I don't know if you're familiar with Tim Hortons here.
No.
A more modest version of Starbucks. People have been known to go through a drive-through at Tim Hortons and just, I'll pay for the next car. And then that car comes up, I'll pay for the next car. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I really do think it's beautiful. But part of me is like, it's just so damn hard for us just to receive. Like what is that? Why can't we just receive? We do a program at treatment. It's one of the lighter programs, and it's to work on self-esteem. And first we'll talk about, we'll create a list and talk about things we're proud of or things that we like about ourselves. And that can get tricky for some people.
Mm-hmm.
Then we put pieces of paper on our backs with our names, and we'll have to write nice things on each other's papers. So we're not seeing what everyone's writing. We have to look at the paper and then read the things out loud. And the majority of people get so uncomfortable. I've had people leave in tears saying like, I can't do this. I do not deserve anything nice about me. Because there's so much shame and addiction.
I think that the deserve word is a key, because we think that we don't deserve things because we have to earn them, because we have a society that tells you that in order to get this, you need to do this.
Yeah.
It's also okay just to receive that without doing anything. That is okay.
Yeah, it's a very conditional society that we live in.
Yes, exactly. At least here in the West, in our Western world.
Yeah, important to note. I think we have a lot to learn without appropriating. We have a lot to learn from other societies and cultures. And I think we're getting there. We're certainly getting there, but there is a lot of work to be done.
Yeah. Yeah. Learning how to take a compliment in a graceful way is step one. Because that's a gift. Every time that somebody tells you something nice, you're receiving a gift.
You're right.
Or even a smile. A smile is a gift too. So when you smile back, you give someone a gift.
And if you don't, it's like you're rejecting them.
Yeah. Which is it's so weird here in Italy, because if you know the person, you will smile at them on the street. But if you don't know them, they'll just look at you. That's it. Or maybe not even look at you. It's just not in the society. So I'm like smiling at everybody and they're all looking at me like I am a literally insane person.
Maybe one of the people that would normally look at you like you were a person who is an insane person, maybe that one person will be affected in a positive way and they'll start smiling at strangers too.
You never know. And every once in a while, there's somebody that they look at me, and then I smiled at them and they look back and they smile back like they're so surprised I've been waiting to smile at somebody for like the last 30 years or something.
It makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Because it's like inviting somebody in for a second.
Especially in an era where, I don't want an umbrella statement, but I think for a lot of people, they are stuck in their phones.
Yeah, it's a strange period of time to be alive. I feel like we're relearning how to connect to each other again.
Yeah, in non-codependent ways.
Yeah, in non-codependent ways.
Healthier ways.
There are more people I feel like that are really seeking like authentic connections with people, you know? Because we realized during the pandemic and stuff like how important it is to have these strong connections with other humans.
I agree. And I think it highlighted the importance of connection through difficulty.
Yeah, agreed.
This is a real passion project for you, Silva, surely.
It is. It is. I love it. I don't know, I'm really curious about other people, and I genuinely like see each person in front of me and want to know them.
What made you decide to do a podcast?
I broke my hip on a bike and I started it to keep myself from going insane. And also because I felt like I wanted to turn a really shitty experience into something positive and maybe even helpful for like not only myself but other people. Here we are.
And has it fulfilled you in that way?
Yes. I mean, I feel like every time I interview somebody, I walk away with more wisdom. Like you said today, that it was so helpful for you to be able to talk about it. I want to create a space for people to talk about their traumas and their victories and their slips and falls and get back ups, you know? Because that's human life.
I listened to, do you know Glennon Doyle's work?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love her podcast. And I think one thing that she's doing that's really monumental, she's talking about her recovery of anorexia. And she's doing it as she's doing it. She's like, so often when we talk about our journeys, it's at the end point. It's at the ta-da, like ta-da. It's powerful because it's so vulnerable, and it gave me a lot of inspiration to be willing to do this, because I am in a really vulnerable place. Like, you know, I'm healing from codependency, but I haven't dated anyone in 4 years. So like one might look at that and be like, well, is she healing from codependency, or is she just avoiding, or whatever story might be created? But it's where I'm at in this moment.
I'm so honored that you'd come on here and be vulnerable and share the process, because you're not the only person that is literally like, yeah, I got through it, but like everything else is still continuing. Just because you got through something doesn't mean that you're like 100% perfect.
Nor will I ever be.
I don't want to be perfect. Ew.
Ew, gross. Ew.
I've really enjoyed this conversation. I think it's been very fruitful.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm receiving that. Thank you.
Make sure you don't miss an episode and stay updated on upcoming events by following me on Instagram at SwitchPath. That's SWITCHPATH on Instagram. Upcoming events include an in-person event in Tuscany, April 12th, 13th, and 14th with my colleague Natalia to help you heal the mother wound, reconnect with yourselves, your power, and nature. Contact me for more details. This episode was recorded in my kitchen and produced by yours truly. And last but not least, thanks to Chris Kirby for the amazing theme music, and to all my guests and listeners. Until next time.